Park Minji stepped off the transport shuttle and immediately felt the weight of 100 eyes on her. The Vrelian Imperial Station stretched above her like a massive metal cathedral, all sharp angles and dark surfaces. Everything here seemed designed to intimidate. The corridors were too tall, the lighting too dim, and the air carried a scent she couldn't quite identify. Something between leather and smoke, she clutched her bag tighter. Inside were yoga mats, meditation cushions, and a collection of calming music files. Minji had been so excited when she got this assignment. A cultural ambassador position with the Vrelian Empire. A chance to share human wellness practices with an alien species. It seemed like a dream job for someone who had spent the last 5 years teaching yoga and mindfulness in Seoul. Ambassador Choi Dae-ho met her at the docking bay. He was a tall man with gray hair and a permanent expression of mild concern. He shook her hand warmly but spoke quickly. "Welcome to the station, Miss Park. I hope your journey was comfortable. We have a very important assignment for you." Minji smiled. "I'm ready. I brought everything I need to start classes. When do we begin?" Choi glanced around nervously. "Soon, very soon. You'll be working with some very special students. The High Chancellor's children." Minji's eyes widened. "The Chancellor's children? That's incredible. What an honor. Yes, well." Choi adjusted his collar. "The Vrelians are a warrior culture, very focused on strength and combat ability. They requested a human instructor to teach their young ones. They've been very impressed with human physical capabilities." That made sense to Minji. Humans were flexible and adaptable. Yoga would be perfect for young aliens learning to control their bodies. She followed Choi through the winding corridors of the station. Everywhere she looked, she saw Vrelian warriors. They were tall, reptilian beings with scales that ranged from deep green to bronze. Their eyes were sharp and watchful. Many carried weapons openly. They arrived at a large training room. It was clearly designed for combat practice. The floor was padded, but scorch marks decorated the walls. Equipment racks held various weapons and armor pieces. In the corner, 3 small Vrelian cubs sat waiting. They looked up at Minji with bright, curious eyes. "Hello," Minji said softly, kneeling to their level. "My name is Minji. What are your names?" The smallest cub with pale green scales spoke first. "I am Ko." "I am Nala," said the middle cub, darker green with bronze patches. "Trix," said the largest, who had almost entirely bronze scales. They were adorable. Minji felt her heart warm. Children were children, no matter what planet they came from. Behind her, she heard heavy footsteps. A massive Vrelian warrior entered the room. His bronze scales gleamed in the dim light and a series of scars crossed his face. He wore elaborate armor with symbols Minji didn't recognize. "This is Commander Ravaith," Choi said quietly. "He leads the elite guard responsible for protecting the Chancellor's family." The commander stared down at Minji. His eyes were like golden coins, unblinking. "You are the human combat instructor?" Minji blinked. "Combat instructor? Oh, no. I'm a yoga teacher. I'm here to teach wellness and mindfulness." Ravaith's head tilted slightly. "Explain these terms." "Well, yoga is a practice that helps with flexibility, balance, and mental calm. It's about connecting the mind and body through movement and breathing." The commander's expression didn't change. Flexibility for combat maneuvers. Balance for zero-gravity engagement. Mental calm for tactical decision-making. Understood. "No, that's not exactly." Minji started, but Ravaith had already turned to his guards. "Record all techniques demonstrated. Full tactical analysis required." Minji looked at Choi, confused, but the ambassador just shrugged helplessly. She decided to let it go. Maybe something was lost in translation. The important thing was teaching the cubs. She unrolled yoga mats on the floor and gestured for the cubs to sit. They watched her with intense focus. Behind them, she could see 4 elite guards standing at attention, watching every move she made. "Okay, let's start with something simple. We're going to practice breathing." Minji sat cross-legged and placed her hands on her knees. The cubs mimicked her immediately. They were quick learners. Close your eyes and breathe in slowly through your nose. Count to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now hold it for a moment. Then breathe out slowly. 1, 2, 3, 4. The cubs followed along, their breathing synchronized. Minji smiled. This was going well. She opened her eyes and saw Commander Raveth making rapid notes on a datapad. 2 guards were recording everything with small devices. Now we're going to do some gentle stretches. Follow my movements. Minji moved into a simple seated twist. The cubs copied her, their young bodies bending easily. Then she showed them cat-cow pose, moving on their hands and knees. The cubs seemed delighted, making small chirping sounds as they arched and rounded their backs. Excellent, Minji praised. You're all naturals at this. She taught them downward dog next. The cubs struggled a bit with this one, their legs shaking as they held the position. But they were determined. She could see that warrior spirit even in these young ones. Behind her, she heard Commander Raveth speaking in a low voice to his guards. Note the defensive posture. Observe how it allows for rapid transition to forward attack. The leg positioning provides stability against strikes from multiple angles. Minji decided to ignore it. Let them interpret it however they wanted. As long as the cubs were learning, for the final pose of the session, she taught them tree pose. Standing on one leg, the other foot pressed against the inner thigh. Hands together at the chest or raised overhead, KO wobbled and fell over. Nala managed to hold it for 5 seconds. Trix, the oldest, stood perfectly still for nearly 20 seconds before lowering her leg. Wonderful job, everyone, Minji said. How do you feel? Strange, Kaio said. But good strange. My legs feel warm, Nala added. I want to do more, Trix announced. Minji's heart soared. This was why she loved teaching. She gathered the cubs together for a brief meditation. They sat in a circle, eyes closed, breathing together. The room fell silent except for the soft sound of their breath. When the session ended, the cubs bounded over to Commander Raveth. Chattering excitedly about the stretching game and asking when they could do it again, Raveth nodded seriously. Your training will continue tomorrow. The human instructor has proven capable. As Minji packed up her mats, she felt satisfied. The first session had gone perfectly. The cubs enjoyed it, and she could already see the benefits. They seemed calmer, more focused. She didn't notice Commander Raveth's final report being transmitted to the High Chancellor. The subject line read, Human Combat Training. Assessment, Day 1. Recommend continuation of advanced tactical instruction for cubs. Instructor demonstrates expertise in psychological warfare preparation and combat positioning systems. Ambassador Choi walked Minji back to her quarters. That went well, I think. It did, Minji agreed. The cubs are wonderful. I can't wait for tomorrow's session. She had no idea that across the station, in the High Chancellor's private chambers, her yoga class was being analyzed by military strategists as an advanced combat training system. She had no idea that the Vrelian Empire was about to become very interested in human wellness practices. And she definitely had no idea that in 3 days, she would be standing before the entire Vrelian War Council, teaching sun salutations to the most dangerous warriors in the galaxy. For now, she simply felt happy. She was doing what she loved, and the cubs were benefiting. What could possibly go wrong? Minji woke up to 17 messages on her communication device. She rubbed her eyes and scrolled through them, confused. Most were from Ambassador Choi. The messages got progressively more excited. Miss Park, the Chancellor wants to meet you. The response to your session has been extraordinary. Please come to my office immediately. She dressed quickly and made her way through the station corridors. Other humans gave her odd looks as she passed. One crew member, a maintenance technician, actually saluted her. Minji had no idea why. At Choi's office, she found the ambassador practically glowing with pride. Minji, sit down, sit down. I have incredible news. The High Chancellor himself has sent a formal commendation. He's impressed with your work. That's wonderful, Minji said, still groggy. The cubs are really enjoying the yoga. Yoga? Choi looked at his datapad. The report says you're teaching advanced tactical positioning and psychological warfare preparation. Minji laughed. No, that's just yoga. It's for wellness and flexibility. Choi waved his hand dismissively. Well, whatever you call it, the Vrelians love it. They're saying it's an incredible gesture of trust that Earth is sharing military training techniques with their royal family. Military training? Minji's smile faded. Ambassador, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Before she could explain, Commander Ravith entered the office without knocking. Behind him stood another Vrelian, even larger and more heavily armored. I am Captain Thelver, head of Vrelian intelligence, the new Vrelian announced. We have analyzed your training session extensively. We have questions. Minji shifted uncomfortably. Of course. What would you like to know? The pose you call downward dog. It appears to be a launching position for aerial attacks. How many variations exist? It's not really for attacks. It stretches the hamstrings and shoulders. Thelver made notes. Hamstring reinforcement for powerful kicks? Shoulder flexibility for weapon handling, excellent, and the breathing technique. That's just to promote calmness and focus. Mental fortification against interrogation and stress, understood. Thelver nodded approvingly. Your people are generous to share such techniques. Minji looked at Ambassador Choi for help, but he seemed just as confused as she was. She decided to try a different approach. Look, yoga is really just a peaceful practice. It's thousands of years old. Humans use it for health, not fighting. Commander Ravith's eyes narrowed. You claim humans developed sophisticated combat training over thousands of years and use it merely for health? This suggests remarkable discipline and restraint. No, you don't understand. We understand perfectly, Thelver interrupted. Your species has refined these techniques across millennia. The fact that you teach them to children shows how deeply embedded combat readiness is in human culture. After the officers left, Minji turned to Choi. We have to correct this misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? Choi looked nervous. Minji, the Vrelian government just praised our military cooperation. Diplomatic relations have never been better. Maybe we shouldn't rock the boat. But I'm not teaching combat. I'm teaching yoga. Can you keep teaching the cubs? Of course. Then let's just continue. These things have a way of working themselves out. Minji wasn't convinced, but she had another session scheduled for that afternoon. When she arrived at the training room, she found twice as many guards as before. They all watched her with intense interest. The cubs bounded over to her, excited. Minji! Minji, Father says you're teaching us human warrior techniques. Trix chirped. Not exactly warrior techniques, Minji said gently. But we're going to have fun today. She led them through a series of poses. Warrior 1, Warrior 2, and Warrior 3. She'd always loved these poses for their strength and grace. The cubs practiced diligently, their small bodies mimicking her movements. Behind her, she heard guards whispering urgently. Did you see? 3 distinct warrior forms. This must be a progressive combat system. Note how the rear leg provides stability. Perfect for defensive holds. The arm positions could redirect incoming attacks. Minji sighed. There was no way to make them understand. She moved on to tree pose again. The cubs were better at it today. Ko managed to hold it for 15 seconds without wobbling. Why do we stand on one leg? Nala asked. It helps with balance and focus, Minji explained. And it makes your standing leg stronger. Commander Ravith stepped forward. Balance training for zero-gravity combat. Focus training for battle awareness. Leg strengthening for powerful strikes. An efficient technique. Sure, Minji said tiredly. Whatever helps. She finished the session with a longer meditation. The cubs sat perfectly still for 5 whole minutes. Minji felt proud of them. They were really developing their ability to be calm and present. That evening, Dr. Lee Yunwoo stopped by her quarters. He was a xenobiologist who'd been on the station for 2 years. He looked worried. Minji, we need to talk about what you're doing. Teaching yoga to children? That's what you think you're doing? The Vrelians think you're teaching combat training. This could become a serious problem. Minji rubbed her temples. I've tried to explain. They won't listen. The problem is that some of what you're teaching actually does have combat applications. Balance, flexibility, mental focus. These are all things warriors need. The Vrelians aren't completely wrong, but that's not the purpose. I know. But try explaining the concept of exercise purely for health to a species that only values strength in the context of battle. It doesn't translate. The next morning, Minji received another message. This one was from an official she didn't recognize. Several Vrelian families were requesting human combat training for their offspring. The demand was so high that the military was considering it as a fleet-wide program. Minji felt her stomach drop. This was spiraling out of control. At the third training session, High Chancellor Morgoth himself attended. He was enormous, with deep green scales that looked almost black. Scars covered his arms and neck. He wore robes that seemed ceremonial but didn't hide his warrior build. Instructor Park, he said, his voice deep and resonant. My children speak highly of your training. They say they feel stronger inside, more focused. I'm glad, Chancellor. That's the goal of yoga. This yoga? It is a human warrior discipline? Not exactly. It's a wellness discipline. The Chancellor's brow ridges raised. Wellness? An interesting term. You mean combat readiness? No, I mean physical and mental health, which leads to combat readiness. Minji gave up. If you say so, Chancellor. I do. I would like to see a formal demonstration. Before the War Council. Can you arrange this? Minji's heart sank. A demonstration? Yes, in 3 days. Show our military leaders these human techniques. If they are as effective as I believe, we should implement them throughout our forces. Ambassador Choi, who had been standing quietly in the corner, stepped forward. Of course, Chancellor. We would be honored. After the Chancellor left, Minji turned to Choi. We have to tell them the truth. What truth? That you're teaching yoga? They already know that, but they think it's combat training. And your classes are helping the cubs? They're calmer, more focused, and more flexible. Those are all beneficial things. Does it matter what the Vrelians call it? Minji thought about that. Maybe he was right. Maybe the names didn't matter. The cubs were genuinely benefiting. And if the Vrelians wanted to interpret yoga as combat training, what was the harm? She spent the next 2 days preparing for the demonstration. She planned a flowing sequence that would showcase the beauty and grace of yoga. She selected calming music. She even prepared a short speech about the philosophy behind the practice. What she didn't know was that the entire Vrelian War Council was preparing to attend. Military strategists were analyzing her previous sessions. Weapons experts were debating the combat applications of each pose. And across the fleet, warriors were being told about the revolutionary human training system that was about to be unveiled. The night before the demonstration, Minji lay in her quarters staring at the ceiling. She thought about all the classes she'd taught. Back on Earth, all the students who'd come to her seeking peace and wellness. She'd never imagined that one day she'd be teaching sun salutations to alien warlords, but maybe that was okay. Maybe this was how cultural exchange really worked. Not through perfect understanding, but through beneficial misunderstanding. The cubs were happy and healthy. The Vrelians respected humanity more. And she was doing what she loved. Tomorrow would be interesting, at least. She had no idea just how interesting it would be. The War Council chamber was the largest room Minji had ever seen. The ceiling stretched up into darkness, and the walls were lined with weapons from 100 different campaigns. Vrelian warriors filled the tiered seating, all wearing their formal armor. The metal gleamed in the dim light. There had to be at least 300 of them. Minji stood in the center of the floor with her yoga mat. Feeling very small and very human. Ambassador Choi stood near the entrance, looking nervous. Beside him were 3 other humans from the station. Seok was an engineer. Jiwon worked in hydroponics. Minho was a communications officer. All three practiced yoga with Minji sometimes. She'd ask them to come for moral support. "This is a lot of people," she whispered to Choi. "Just do what you always do," he whispered back. "Teach the cubs." "The council just wants to observe?" High Chancellor Morgath sat on a raised platform at the far end of the chamber. War Marshal Kethrin, the supreme military commander, sat beside him. Kethrin was the largest Vrelian Minji had seen yet. His scales were so dark they looked black, and he wore armor that seemed more decorative than functional. Covered in symbols of rank and achievement, Commander Raveth escorted the three cubs to the center of the floor. They each had their own yoga mat now, small ones sized for their bodies. They waved at Minji excitedly. "Are you ready?" she asked them. "Yes, instructor," they said together. "Okay, let's show everyone what we've been learning." She pressed play on her music device. Soft, gentle sounds filled the massive chamber. It sounded strange here, almost out of place. But the cubs immediately settled into position, sitting cross-legged on their mats. "We begin with breath," Minji said, projecting her voice so the council could hear. "Breathing connects the mind and body. It calms the spirit and centers our awareness." 300 warriors leaned forward, watching intently. "Close your eyes. Breathe in through your nose. Count to 4. Hold. Breathe out through your nose. Count to 4. The cubs followed perfectly. Their breathing synchronized. Minji could see their small bodies relaxing, their shoulders dropping. In the seating, she heard whispers. "Mental preparation technique. Centering before combat. Observe the focused state they achieve." Minji decided to ignore it and continue. "Now we move into cat-cow pose. This warms up the spine and prepares the body." She demonstrated, moving on her hands and knees, arching her back and then rounding it. The cubs copied her movements smoothly. They'd practiced this many times. "Good, now we move into downward dog." She lifted her hips up and back, straightening her legs, pressing her heels toward the floor. The cubs followed. Kao's legs shook a bit, but he held the pose. "Feel the stretch in your legs. Feel how your whole body is engaged but calm." More whispers from the council. Launching position. Note the leg engagement. The body forms a stable platform for rapid movement. Minji moved them through a sun salutation sequence. Mountain pose, forward fold, halfway lift, plank, low push-up, upward dog, downward dog, and back to standing. She moved slowly so the cubs could follow. They did beautifully. "Again," she said. "This time, connect each movement to your breath." They flowed through the sequence 5 times. By the end, Minji could see the cubs were warmed up and focused. This was yoga at its best. Movement and breath becoming one. Now we practice the warrior poses. She moved into warrior 1, the front knee bent, back leg straight, arms reaching up. The cubs mirrored her. She held the pose for 30 seconds, then switched sides. Warrior 2. Arms stretched out to the sides, gaze over the front hand, hips open. The cubs held the position steadily. Warrior 3. This was the hardest one. Standing on one leg, the other leg extended behind, body parallel to the floor, arms stretched forward. It required serious balance. Kyle wobbled and put his foot down. Nala managed to hold it for 10 seconds. But Trix, the oldest cub, held the pose for nearly 30 seconds. Perfectly still and balanced, the War Council erupted in low growls of approval. The sound echoed through the chamber. War Marshal Kethrin stood. "Explain this technique." Minji felt her heart race. The War Marshal was intimidating. "It's called Warrior 3. It builds leg strength, balance, and focus." "The standing leg could deliver a powerful kick from this position," Kethrin observed. "The extended leg protects the rear. The forward arms could block or strike. And the balance required suggests zero-gravity combat application." "I suppose that's one interpretation," Minji said carefully. "Show us more." Minji guided the cubs through more poses. Triangle pose, tree pose, chair pose, and pigeon pose. The cubs performed each one with increasing confidence. The council watched every movement with intense focus. For the final sequence, Minji had them do a flow she called Dancing Warrior. It connected multiple poses in a smooth, continuous movement. It was beautiful to watch. The cubs moved like water, their young bodies flowing from one position to the next. When they finished, the chamber fell silent. Then Catherine began a slow, rhythmic growl. The other warriors joined in. It grew louder and louder until the sound filled the entire space. Minji realized they were showing approval. "Impressive," Catherine said. "The synchronized movement, the mental discipline required, the physical control. These cubs demonstrate capabilities beyond their years." High Chancellor Murgath descended from his platform and approached the cubs. They bowed respectfully to their father. "You have learned well," he told them. "This human training has made you stronger." "We feel different, Father," Trix said. "Calm but also strong. The best warriors are those who can control themselves before they control others," Murgath said. He turned to Minji. "Instructor Park, your teaching methods are extraordinary. We would like to implement this training fleet-wide." Manji's eyes widened. "Fleet-wide?" "Yes, all warriors should benefit from these techniques. We will designate training facilities. Assign instructors to learn from you. This will become part of standard Vrelian military preparation." Ambassador Choi rushed forward, beaming. "Chancellor, this is a tremendous honor. Earth is pleased to share our knowledge." Minji tried to speak. "Chancellor, I should explain something about yoga. The War Marshal will coordinate with you," Murgath continued, not hearing her. "We are grateful for this military cooperation. It shows great trust between our peoples." Kim Yuna, a human journalist who'd been allowed to observe, was already transmitting her report back to Earth. Minji could see her in the corner. Speaking excitedly into her recording device, the council began to disperse. Warriors approached Minji, asking questions about different poses, about breathing techniques, about meditation. She answered as best she could, but her head was spinning. This wasn't supposed to happen. She was just teaching yoga. How had it turned into this? Seok, Jiwon, and Minho came over to her once the crowd thinned. "That was incredible," Seok said. "Did you see how they reacted?" "They think yoga is combat training," Minji said weakly. "So what?" Jiwon shrugged. "The cubs are doing great. And now you're famous. Famous for something I'm not even doing." Minho patted her shoulder. "You're sharing something good with them. Does it matter what they call it?" Later that evening, Minji returned to her quarters exhausted. She checked her messages and found hundreds of them. News outlets across human space wanted interviews. The story was everywhere. Yoga instructor becomes alien military advisor. Earth secret combat training revealed to Vrelian Empire. Human wellness practices revolutionize alien warfare. She sat on her bed and put her head in her hands. There was a knock at her door. When she opened it, she found Commander Raveth standing there. "Instructor Park, I wanted to inform you that you have been granted the rank of Honorary Combat Instructor in the Vrelian military. This is a rare honor for an outsider." "Commander, I need to tell you something. Yoga isn't really combat training." Raveth tilted his head. "But I have observed it. I have analyzed every technique. The applications are clear. The applications aren't the purpose. Yoga was created for wellness, for peace, for connecting mind and body. And it does all those things. The cubs are proof. They are calmer, more focused, more physically capable. Whether you call it combat training or wellness training, the results are the same." Minji thought about that. Maybe he had a point. Maybe she was too caught up in definitions and labels. The cubs were benefiting. The Vrelians were excited about learning more. Cultural exchange was happening, even if it wasn't happening the way she'd planned. "I suppose you're right," she said finally. "You will begin training Vrelian instructors tomorrow. They will learn your techniques and spread them throughout the fleet. Your contribution to Vrelian military effectiveness will be remembered." After he left, Minji lay down and stared at the ceiling. She'd come here to teach yoga. Now she was apparently revolutionizing alien military training. Life was strange sometimes, but the cubs were happy. They were healthier and calmer, and that had to count for something, even if everyone else was confused about why. Lieutenant Han Sungmin arrived on the station 3 days after the demonstration. He was a military liaison officer with actual combat experience, sent from Earth to assist with defense coordination. He was tall, muscular, and looked uncomfortable in the diplomatic setting. His first meeting with Minji happened by accident. He walked past the training room and saw her leading a class of 20 adult Vrelian warriors through a vinyasa flow. He stopped and watched, his expression growing more confused by the second. After the class ended and the warriors filed out, looking satisfied, Han approached her. "Miss Park?" "I'm Lieutenant Han Sungmin. Can we talk?" "Of course. How can I help you?" "I just watched your class." "You're teaching yoga." "Yes, that's right." "But the Vrelians think you're teaching combat training." Minji sighed and sat down on her mat. "I know, I've tried to explain. They won't listen. This is a serious problem. There's been talk back on Earth about sharing military techniques with the Vrelians. Some people are upset about it. They think we're giving away strategic advantages. We're not giving away anything except stretching exercises." Han ran his hand through his hair. "That's what I thought. But the Vrelian military is implementing this fleet-wide. They're calling it human flexibility combat training. There are formal reports about its effectiveness. I can't help what they call it. We need to correct this misunderstanding before it gets worse." Han requested a meeting with Commander Raveth that afternoon. Minji attended, along with Ambassador Choi and Dr. Lee Hun-woo. They gathered in a conference room. Raveth sat across from them, his golden eyes watchful. "Commander," Han began, "there's been a misunderstanding about the training Miss Park is providing." "Explain." "She's teaching yoga. It's a wellness practice. It was never designed for combat." Raveth's expression didn't change. "I have observed every session. I have watched humans perform these techniques. The combat applications are evident." "The combat applications aren't the point," Han insisted. "Yoga exists for health and meditation. Lieutenant, I have served in combat for 40 cycles. I recognize tactical training when I see it. The balance, the flexibility, the mental discipline. These are warrior skills. They can be used that way, but that's not why they were created. Why something was created matters less than what it becomes." Raveth leaned forward. "Tell me, Lieutenant, do you practice this yoga?" "Sometimes. For fitness and stress relief." "And has it made you a better warrior?" Han hesitated. "I suppose it's helped with my balance and flexibility." "Then how is it not combat training?" Han looked at Minji helplessly. She shrugged. This was the same argument she'd been having for days. Dr. Lee spoke up. "Commander, perhaps we can clarify the cultural context. Humans have many practices that serve multiple purposes. Yoga can improve combat effectiveness, but it was created by people seeking spiritual enlightenment." "Spiritual enlightenment through physical discipline? This sounds like warrior philosophy to me." "It's different," Dr. Lee tried again. "The original practitioners were peaceful. They weren't training for war." "Then they were fools," Raveth said flatly, "to develop such effective techniques and not use them for combat. But humans are clearly wiser now. You share these techniques with us. That shows good judgment." Ambassador Choi cleared his throat. "Perhaps we're approaching this wrong. The techniques are beneficial regardless of their original purpose. The cubs are healthier. The warriors who've tried it report better focus and less injury. Does the historical intent really matter?" "It matters if Earth thinks we're sharing military secrets when we're not," Han said. "It matters if the Vrelians think we're entering some kind of military alliance when we're just teaching exercise." "Are we not allies?" Raveth asked, his tone dangerous. "Of course we are," Choi said quickly. "The lieutenant is just concerned about clarity." The meeting ended without resolution. Han left frustrated. Raveth left convinced he was right. And Minji left with a headache. That evening, a new figure arrived on the station. Elder Scholar Vishara was ancient by Vrelian standards. Her scales were pale gray, almost white. She moved slowly but with dignity. She had spent decades studying alien cultures. Hi! Chancellor Morgoth had summoned her to mediate the dispute. Mungie met with her the next morning. Vishara's chambers were filled with books and datapads. Information from dozens of worlds covered every surface. Sit, Instructor Park, the elder said, her voice soft but clear. Tell me about yoga. Minji explained everything. The history, the philosophy, the practice. She talked about the ancient practitioners who developed it. She explained how it spread across Earth, how different cultures adapted it. She was honest about how some aspects could help with combat, but emphasized that wasn't the original purpose. Vishara listened carefully. When Minji finished, the elder was quiet for a long moment. I understand your frustration, she finally said. But you must understand something about my people. We are warriors. It is what we are. Everything we do, everything we value, relates to combat in some way. We cannot separate physical discipline from warfare. They are the same thing to us, but they're not the same thing to humans. I know. I have studied your species. You are strange to us. You develop techniques for peace that we would develop for war. You seek wellness where we seek strength. And yet, you are excellent warriors when you choose to be. This confuses us, so what do? We accept that the same practice means different things to different people. To you, yoga is wellness. To us, it is combat training. Both are true, but that doesn't solve the misunderstanding. Perhaps there is no misunderstanding. Perhaps there is simply different understanding. Vishara arranged a formal meeting with all parties. The High Chancellor, the War Council, the Human Delegation, and Minji all gathered. The elder stood before them and spoke with authority. I have investigated this matter thoroughly. The human practice called yoga was indeed created for wellness and spiritual development, not warfare. This is fact. The Vrelian officers shifted uncomfortably. However, Vishara continued, the techniques developed through yoga have obvious combat applications. Flexibility, balance, mental focus, breath control. These are warrior skills, regardless of their origin. This is also fact. She looked at Minji. The humans did not intentionally share military training. They shared a wellness practice. Then she looked at the Vrelians. But we have correctly identified the combat value of that practice. Our analysis was not wrong. So who is right? War Marshal Catherine asked. Both and neither. The practice is what it is. How we use it defines its purpose for us. High Chancellor Morgoth considered this. The cubs. How do they benefit? They are calmer, Commander Ravith reported. Their focus has improved. They sleep better. They have fewer aggressive outbursts. And their physical capabilities have increased. These are good outcomes, Morgoth said. Regardless of what we call the practice. Your children are benefiting from wellness training, Minji said firmly. That's what yoga does. It makes people healthier and happier. If healthier and happier warriors is the result, then we will continue, Morgoth decided. Whether we call it combat training or wellness training makes no difference. The results speak for themselves. Ambassador Choi looked relieved. Lieutenant Han still looked unhappy, but he nodded acceptance. There is one more thing, Vishara said. If the humans are willing, I suggest a true cultural exchange. We teach you our meditation techniques for managing combat stress. You continue teaching us yoga for wellness. Both sides learn. Both sides benefit. Both sides maintain their own understanding of the practices. That's acceptable, Morgoth said. He looked at Minji. Will you continue teaching the cubs? Of course, Minji said. That was always my plan. And you accept that we will use your techniques for military purposes? Minji thought about the cubs, about how much calmer and happier they'd become, about how the adult warriors who practiced yoga reported less pain and better sleep. I accept that you'll use them however works best for you. I just hope they bring you peace as well as strength. An interesting hope, Morgoth said. But we shall see. The meeting ended. As everyone filed out, Commander Ravith approached Minji privately. Instructor, I want you to know something. Yes? I have been practicing the meditation you taught. At night when I cannot sleep. It helps. He paused as if embarrassed. I sleep better now than I have in many years. Minji smiled. That's wonderful, Commander. Do not tell anyone I said this. Your secret is safe with me. That night, Minji felt better than she had in days. The truth was out. Everyone understood the situation now. There was still confusion, but at least it was honest confusion. And the cubs were still benefiting. That was what mattered most. 2 weeks after the formal meeting, Minji stood in the training room preparing for her largest class yet. 30 beings waited for her. 20 Vrelian warriors, 7 human crew members, and the 3 cubs who had started it all. The Vrelian military had officially adopted what they called human wellness combat conditioning. Training facilities across the fleet were being modified. Instructors were being trained. But for this moment, everyone was here to learn together. Welcome everyone, Minji said. Today we're going to focus on what yoga really is. Not combat training, not wellness training, just movement and breath and awareness. She led them through a gentle warm-up. The humans moved easily, familiar with the poses. The Vrelians were stiffer but determined. Commander Ravith stood in the back row, struggling to touch his toes. Humans have unfairly flexible spines, he muttered. Minji smiled. It's not about flexibility, Commander. It's about working within your own limits. They moved through sun salutations together. The mixed group created an interesting energy. The humans flowed smoothly. The Vrelians moved with power and control. The cubs darted between them, helping the adults with their form. Father, you need to breathe more, Trix told a large warrior who was holding his breath. Your back foot should turn out, Ko demonstrated to a human engineer. Feel it here, Nala said. Touching her own leg to show where the stretch should be, the cubs had become little assistant teachers. Minji felt proud watching them. After the class, everyone sat in a circle for meditation. This was always the hardest part for the Vrelians. Sitting still didn't come naturally to warriors. But they tried. Close your eyes, Minji said softly. Focus on your breath. When thoughts come, let them pass like clouds. Don't hold on to them. Just breathe. The room fell silent except for the sound of breathing. 30 beings, human and Vrelian, sitting together in peace. It was beautiful. When the meditation ended, War Marshal Kethron raised his hand. Instructor, I have a question. Of course. You say yoga is not for combat, but I feel stronger when I practice it. My warriors report fewer injuries. Our response times have improved? How is this not combat training? Minji thought carefully about her answer. Because the goal isn't to make you better at fighting. The goal is to make you healthier. If being healthier makes you better at fighting, that's a side effect, not the purpose. I do not understand the difference. I know. And that's okay? You can use yoga for combat preparation. I just want you to know that it offers more than that. It offers peace. Peace through strength, Kethron said. No, just peace. Dr. Lee raised his hand. Can I suggest something? Maybe we're all right. Maybe yoga is both wellness and combat training. Maybe it's whatever the person practicing it needs it to be. That's very diplomatic, Lieutenant Han said dryly. But he was smiling. Ambassador Choi stood up. I want to make an announcement. The Vrelian Empire has agreed to teach human personnel their meditation techniques for managing stress and trauma. This is a true cultural exchange. Both sides teaching. Both sides learning. The Vrelians growled their approval. The humans clapped. Tio raised a small hand. Can I say something? Of course, Minji said. Before Instructor Minji came, I was angry a lot. I would fight with my siblings. I couldn't sleep. Now I feel better. I don't know if it's combat training or wellness training. I just know I feel good. Nala nodded. Me too. I like the stretching. And the breathing. It makes me happy. Trix stood up proudly. I am stronger now. But also calmer. Father says I am becoming a better warrior, but I think I am just becoming better. High Chancellor Morgath, who had been observing from the doorway, stepped into the room. Everyone bowed respectfully. My children speak wisdom, he said. We Vrelians have focused so much on strength that we forgot about peace. Perhaps that is our weakness. Peace is not weakness, Chancellor, Minji said carefully. No, I am beginning to understand that. Strength without peace is just violence. Peace without strength is just vulnerability. Perhaps humans understand the balance better than we do. Humans struggle with balance too, Minji admitted. We're not perfect. We have wars and conflicts just like you. But we try to find peace where we can. Then we will learn from you. And you will learn from us. Over the next few weeks, the cultural exchange deepened. Vrelian warriors taught humans their meditation techniques. These were different from yoga meditation, more focused on channeling aggression and fear into controlled energy. The humans found them surprisingly helpful. Minji learned that Vrelian combat meditation involved visualizing threats and practicing mental responses. It was intense and sometimes frightening. But Lieutenant Han reported that it helped his soldiers manage stress in difficult situations. Meanwhile, yoga spread through the Vrelian fleet. Not every warrior enjoyed it. Some found it too slow, too peaceful. But many discovered benefits they hadn't expected. Fewer training injuries, better sleep, improved focus. And for some, like Commander Raveth, a sense of calm they'd never known before. Kim Yuna, the journalist, continued reporting on the story. Her articles shifted from sensational headlines about combat training to thoughtful pieces about cultural understanding. She interviewed warriors who practiced yoga. She interviewed the cubs. She interviewed Minji. What have you learned from this experience? Kim asked during one interview. Minji thought for a moment. That communication is harder than I thought. That the same thing can mean different things to different people. And that sometimes the best outcomes come from unexpected misunderstandings. Do you regret what happened? No, the cubs are happy and healthy. Relations between humans and Vrelians are stronger. And I'm still teaching yoga, just to a different audience than I expected. 3 months after she'd first arrived on the station, Minji taught her regular morning class. The training room was always full now. Warriors came before their shifts. Engineers came during breaks. Even some of the diplomatic staff attended. Commander Raveth was there, still struggling with downward dog but much more flexible than he'd been. The 3 cubs were there, now advanced enough to demonstrate poses for newcomers. Seok, Jiwon, and Minho were there, helping translate instructions for Vrelians who were still learning human language. As Minji led the class through a flowing sequence, she looked around the room. Humans and Vrelians moving together. Different bodies, different backgrounds, different reasons for being there. But all moving as one. This was yoga. This was what it was meant to be. Connection, community, breath and movement and awareness. It didn't matter what anyone called it. Combat training or wellness training or just training. What mattered was that it brought them together. After class, the cubs ran up to her. Instructor Minji, Trix said. We want to show you something. They led her to a small garden area near their family quarters. It was a space she'd never seen before. In the center was a small statue. It showed a human figure in tree pose, standing on one leg with hands pressed together. We asked Father to make this, Nala explained, to remember what you taught us. Not just the poses, Ko added, but the feeling, the peace inside. Minji felt tears in her eyes. Thank you. This is beautiful. High Chancellor Morgath appeared behind them. My children insisted. They wanted to honor you. I'm honored. But I was just doing my job. You did more than your job. You changed how we think, how we see strength and peace. That is worth honoring. That evening, Minji sat in her quarters looking out at the stars. Earth was visible in the distance, a blue dot against the darkness. She thought about her yoga studio back in Seoul, about her quiet life, teaching classes to people seeking wellness and peace. She'd come here expecting to share yoga with aliens. She'd succeeded, even if not in the way she'd planned. The Vrelians would always see combat applications in the poses. That was their nature. But they were also learning about peace, about the value of calm and balance, and maybe that was enough. Maybe perfect understanding wasn't necessary. Maybe cultural exchange was messy and confusing and full of misinterpretation. But as long as both sides benefited, as long as the cubs were happy and healthy, as long as warriors learned to sleep peacefully after years of nightmares, then something good had happened, her communication device chimed. It was a message from Ambassador Choi. The Vrelian government has requested that you stay for another year. They want to expand the program. Are you interested? Minji smiled and typed her response. Yes, I'll stay. She had more to teach, and more to learn. The cubs still needed her. Commander Ravith still couldn't touch his toes. And somewhere out there in the fleet, warriors were discovering that strength and peace didn't have to be opposites. She returned to her window and watched the stars. Tomorrow she'd teach another class. Humans and Vrelians moving together, breathing together, finding their own understanding of what yoga meant to them. And that was exactly as it should be. In the training room, the lights dimmed for the night. But on the mat in the corner, a single small figure remained. Kao, the smallest cub, practicing tree pose in the darkness, standing perfectly still, balanced, and peaceful. Exactly as Minji had taught, the yoga hadn't changed the Vrelians into humans. It had just given them new tools to be better versions of themselves. And in the end, that was what yoga had always been about. Not changing who you were, but helping you become who you wanted to be.